Welcome to the public hearing, Tuesday, July 29th, 2020. The topic is the 2019. Come on. Okay, there we go. Welcome to the public hearing regarding the 2019-2020 biennial budget amendment number 4. If you'd like to join in by conference call, the phone number is 360-252-9020, and the PIN number is 1234. The purpose of this public hearing is to accept and consider testimony on the proposed Amendment 4 to the 2019-2020 biennial budget. This is a virtual public hearing. Those wishing to testify have joined either by Zoom, phone, emailed in the comment, or mailed in comment. If you wish to testify, please visit the Thurston County homepage online and select Announcements of Public Hearings on the left-hand side. The information to join this public hearing remotely has been posted there. If you do not wish to testify, but would like to listen and follow along, please watch the live stream through the Thurston County YouTube channel to help us manage our attendance. Staff Robin Campbell, the Assistant County Manager and Finance Director, will provide information on this topic. Assuming those on the Zoom wish to testify, I will read your name aloud, and I'll read the names on the sign-up sheet 3 at a time. Is there nobody downstairs, I would imagine, is there?
No.
Okay. I'll read your names, so those wishing to testify, you'll be ready to go. After the Zoom and in-person attendees testify, then we will go to the conference call to see if there's anybody on the line that would like to testify. You will each have 3 minutes to testify. Time may not be given to another person. When you are called on, please state your name and your address for the record. The clerk of the board, Amy Davis, will keep track of the time, and if you're on the call and you can't see the timer, you'll know when your time's up. But what I'd like to do is introduce ourselves. I'm John Hutchings, the chair of the board. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Vice Chair Commissioner Ty Menser. And on the bench here in support is County Manager Ramiro Chavez and the clerk of the board, Amy Davis. On the Zoom, we also have the Assistant County Manager and Finance Director, Robin Campbell. There's a host of other folks, but we will get to them eventually. So with that, let me see. Staff, the board, we did the timer. Okay, so the public hearing is now open. And Robin will present background information of the proposal, written comments that have been submitted, and any additional information requested by the board. Robin, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. I am going to share my screen and walk very quickly through PowerPoint presentation. Get it where I can see it too. So this afternoon, you are taking public comment on budget amendment number 4. So the state law governs the county budget process. RCW 364250 allows for a biennial budget and requires with a biennial budget that we have a midterm adjustment. And RCW 3640-100 allows for transfers or revisions within departments, and in the law, departments includes offices, or supplemental appropriations to the budget for unanticipated federal or state funds. We have a biennial budget here in Thurston County, and we do regular amendments. So when we enacted the 2019-2020 budget in December of 2018, we had a plan. The plan was 2 amendments a year with the midterm adjustment that was required. So on June 11th in 2019, we did the first amendment. It's all technical adjustments, unanticipated receipts, and any corrections that we found that needed to be made. We did the midterm adjustment in November That addressed any changes that offices and departments needed made for 2020. Amendment number 2 is in December. The amendment in December is to address any emergencies and again, unanticipated receipts. Amendment 3 was scheduled for May of this year. You adopted Amendment 3 on May 19th. Again, focused on technical adjustments, unanticipated receipts, and corrections. And then we had planned Amendment 4 for December. But as you know, plans change. Due to COVID-19, we added Amendment 4. And this budget is focused on two things, the COVID-19 funding and the budget reductions. For COVID-19, at the bottom line, we've received $15.7 million in coronavirus relief funds. The acronym is CRF. It's also called the CARES Act Fund or Treasury Funds. The county received $15.7 million. It's very limited in its use. And we have planned expenditures, which I'll review in a moment. And this budget also includes $538,389 from COVID-19 CDBG funding that will be used for emergency housing. The budget reductions will go to in much greater detail, but there are $2.9 million in general fund expenditure reductions, $62,000 in lost revenue in the general fund, $1.2 million reductions in other fund expenditures, and $1.9 million that we are anticipating to lose in other funds in the revenue. Here's the allocation of the coronavirus relief funds. The major allocations, $2 million is going to our community partners. $1.5 million of that's going to Thurston Strong through the EDC. It's being used to support our small businesses, childcare, and other items in the community that our partners need to keep the business community operating. And $500,000 is going to United Way, mainly focused on food and hygiene support for people in need. $2.9 million is allocated to county expenses that were incurred from March through May of this year. And the bulk of that is personnel costs for the immediate response to COVID-19. $6.4 million is allocated to public health for the continued response to the pandemic. $3.6 million is county expenses. I'll break that down in a moment. And $800,000 roughly is reserved for emerging needs and things we had not anticipated at the time you made the allocations. The internal county expenses are for June to October because at this point in time, the state of Washington that the funds are coming through has required local jurisdictions to spend the money by October 31st. We hope that that will change, but so far that's the rule. We are spending the money, $1.5 million on court space to enable physical distancing and have more than one jury trial at a time. $800,000 is going to information technology. This supports teleworking, physical distancing, and enhanced service access for the community. $600,000 is for ongoing emergency response. That includes money that's going towards a isolation and quarantine unit that has been stood up, if you will, for people who have nowhere else that they can isolate or quarantine, and also additional funding for Medic One. $500,000 is being spent for county employees and our customers who come to county offices for PPE, things like masks and sanitizer, also spent on office safety, um, for enhanced janitorial services for cleaning. You see plexiglass in our buildings when you go to service counters. So that is all anticipated to cost about $500,000. And then 200,000 in a wide variety of miscellaneous small costs. Two examples are court interpreters and cleaning at county parks. Do you have any questions at this point about the coronavirus relief funds?
Any questions? No, thank you, Robin.
Okay, I'll keep going. To the budget reductions. In the general fund, the budget reductions include 200,000 in savings for hiring delay in all offices or departments, 300,000 for a reduced contribution to the ER&R fund. That is basically our vehicle savings account. The county contributes money into this reserve fund so that when our vehicles or large equipment need to be replaced, that we have money there to do that. So this year, the board is reducing the contribution to that account. 1.1 million in savings from a general reduction that is being taken on all offices and departments funded by the general fund. It's roughly 2%, not exactly 2%. A few offices are a little more than that. But every general fund office and department has a reduction. The $500,000 in savings to eliminate vacant positions, and 800,000 in savings for future projects, for not having an election in April, a special election, and from offices that are buying back FTEs from the vacancy list. We also have general fund revenue that we anticipate losing, 62,000 in collections that the clerk would have made. In our other funds, the reductions, again, hiring delays are anticipated to result in about 200,000. The ER&R reduction to other funds is just under $1 million, with the bulk of that being in public works. Some miscellaneous items in other funds will save about 200,000 from having canceled the fair, so those expenses will not be incurred, and then changes in FTEs. We also anticipate that there will be additional reductions in other fund expenditures that are not in Amendment 4, but we need time to look at the impact of the pandemic on revenue in all our funds. And the county has over 70 funds, and we need to look at each one, and we just haven't had the time to do that. We've prepared this amendment in a compressed time frame. So the other funds, department directors have the vast majority of administrative oversight of non-general fund funds. We will be reviewing those funds in August, and if any additional budget reductions are necessary, we'll be bringing those to the board. The other fund revenue that we know is impacted, we expect to lose 300,000 from canceling the fair. We anticipate 1.4 million in state contributions to the road fund will be lost. The state has already indicated reduced revenue sharing. And 200,000 from clerk collections in other funds, and also in lost revenue for the parks because they were not renting out park spaces when our parks were closed. So why are we anticipating lost revenue to the county funds? I don't think it's any secret that not only our county, but the state, the nation, and the world have gone into an instant recession due to the pandemic. And I'm showing you this slide um, not because I think the forecast presented here is accurate, but rather so we can have a conversation about the shape of a recession. So what you see here on the screen is this V shape. This is what everybody anticipates this recession is going to look like. A fast down and then slow growth over time. So a V-shaped recession is the most common. It's V for very common type of recession. You may recall that the Great Recession of about 10 years ago was a U-shaped recession. We had a pretty quick down and then it stayed flat for a very long time and then went back up. U for unusual. You don't usually see a U-shaped recession. Then the other thing that people are worried about might happen in this recession is a W shape. W for worried. We're worried that it's going to have come down. We'll start to see growth again, and it'll drop again as the second wave of the pandemic forces the economy to shut down again, and then slow growth over time. So the big question is, what shape is this recession? A recession impacts revenue. That's why we're mainly focused on what's happening to the revenue. So these are the county's revenues. Property tax, by far the greatest, 41% of the revenue to the general fund. Sales tax makes up about 19%. The other two big sections, 16% for charges for services, and then 10% in intergovernmental payments. So we're really focused on the big pieces here: property tax, sales tax, and to some degree our intergovernmental payments, because we know that the state and federal governments will be hard hit. Property tax revenue, since April, we've been saying that we really won't see what's going to happen to the property tax until the second payment is due in October. That first payment in April, the pandemic hadn't been going on very long, so we really didn't expect to see an impact there, although our treasurer tells us that collections were down about 1% compared to where they were a year ago at that time. So it's going to be a while before we know what happens to property tax. Sales tax revenue for March and April were delayed by the state until July 30th. And even when we do get data about sales tax, it comes in once a month. So we only get one new data point each month. We just got the last one for July, and we don't expect the next one now until August 24th. So it is agonizing to wait for the next data point in sales tax, but wait we must. Then the Washington State Legislature, when we think about intergovernmental income or revenue to the county, a lot of it comes from the state. The state is about to grapple with a $4.4 billion gap. And the county won't know if that's going to affect our funding from the state until the legislature meets in January and figures out how they're going to address that gap. And the legislative session won't end until May at the earliest if there's no special sessions. So it's going to be quite a while before we know if we're impacted by what the state does. And then Congress will soon begin to assess how they're going to pay for all of this federal relief. And that could impact what we get from federal grants in the next 2 years. But again, it's going to be a while before we know. So one of the things we've had to do in this particular budget cycle is start to get comfortable with uncertainty. Because as hard as it is to make the choices that you have to make, it's even harder to make them when we don't have all the facts. But we're not going to have those facts for quite a while, and you cannot wait to act. Since sales tax is the one thing that we do have data on so far, not many data points, but a few, we focused our attention on sales tax. These are adjusted numbers because of the delay in collections. You see, compared to forecast, once we got adjusted numbers, since May, we're down about 5% compared to where we would be. And I start looking beginning in May, because there's a 2-month lag between the time a person in a shop pays the tax and the time it's paid to the county. So in May, we were receiving revenue from March. And that's why we start to look, we really didn't hit January and February collections would be great. But the pandemic really hit home in March. So we start looking at the numbers here and projecting what they're going to do out here. So here's the graphs that I share with you on a regular basis. And here, right out here at the end, you start to see the year-over-year change that we were just talking about. This graph blows it up a little more. And when we think about what is the shape of this recession, you start to see that V shape, the very common V shape recession. It drops down and it's starting back up. What we don't know is if this month, the revenue we received in July is an anomaly. Because back when we were looking at the Great Recession back here, we saw a few months early on that popped back up, but most of them were negative. So when we look at this, is this going to do the same thing? Is the next month going to be down even more? Or are we really starting to recover? We're not going to know. Or are we going to see what we're all worried about, that W shape? We really don't know, and we're not going to know for a while. So here is the forecast. Here are in yellow box right here, the budget reductions. And really what you're trying to address, here it is in a graphical shape, is the fund balance. As we've talked about again since April, we're not so worried about this year. We can make it through this year okay. What we're worried about are the next 2 years. If we don't take any action now, the impact in future years will be even greater. So what the preliminary budget for this amendment does is start to take reductions in 2020 so that the impact in 2021 and 2022 is not as great to the offices and departments. So here's where we're at. This is the process for Amendment 4. You've held numerous public meetings in April through July. We've shared many versions of forecasts. Every time I get new data, you get a new version of the forecast. Anyone familiar with forecasts knows that's how they work. We gave notice of this public hearing. Notice was published on July 15th and July 22nd. We posted documents for this hearing on July 17th. The notice of the budget adoption were posted in the newspapers on July 21st and the 28th. Here we are at the public hearing on July 29th. You'll have a meeting on Friday, July 31st, to discuss the comments that you received today. And then the plan is for budget adoption on August 4th. Public comments received to date, you've received testimony at your board meetings. There are also written comments that the budget office has received. As of the end of the day yesterday, 28 comments that we received are in support for the board to add an item to this budget amendment that would fund a climate action initiative. One comment is in favor of increasing funding for COVID-19 testing. One comment is opposed to the reduction to the sheriff's budget, and one comment is in favor of a reduction in the sheriff's budget that is equitable with the reductions that other offices and departments are taking. That is the end of my presentation. I would, however, just like to say how much I appreciate the work of the budget team, Denise Doty, Olivia Odman, and Patty Rosetto, and Whitney Pearsall, who has done quite a bit of data analysis. They've all worked very hard to have this ready for you today, and we wouldn't be this far without all of their hard work. So I really appreciate all the work that they did and others around the county. I'd be happy to take your questions at this time.
There we go. Have you any questions, Commissioner Menser?
I do not.
Any questions?
I do have
Edwards?
one question on page 7 of your handout.
Yes.
Under other funds, revenue, it shows that we're not going to get 1.4 million from collection towards the road fund. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Wasn't it about 2 months ago that we spent $1 million on a sand shed out of this same fund?
The board did choose to put money that had already been set aside for a capital project for a sand shed, yes.
And that was out of this fund?
It was out of the road fund, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Robin. The ER&R fund, it's on the same page, number 7. ER&R was reduced by $900,000. And how many departments or offices pay into the ER&R fund?
I would say about a dozen of our offices and departments. The assessor, the auditor, public works, the sheriff, central services, any office or department that uses vehicles or large equipment pay into the ER&R fund.
About a dozen offices were impacted by that.
Yes.
Okay. That's it. I don't have any other questions at this point. So now we'll go into public comment. And what I'll do is I'll read the names for the people that are here in person. Then I'll go to the Zoom, and then we'll go to the conference call. And the first one is Larry Jefferson, followed by John Pettit.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Larry Jefferson, and I'm a senior defense attorney with Thurston County Public Defense and a supervisor of the felony unit. Today, we're here requesting to be able to buy back a position for our office using funds that we recently determined would be available given our forecasting for funds for the year 2020. It's my understanding that we learned that we could buy back a position at the end of May 2020. However, the financial information that we had at that time indicated we would not have enough funds to do so. After evaluating our financial position through the second quarter of 2020, including operational changes that Thurston County Public Defense started advancing 3 years ago, we learned that our situation had changed on July 10th, when after analyzing the available data, we are now forecasting to be over 500,000 in the black for the first time in 15 to 20 years, which is very exciting news. Currently, we are the only department that is slated to lose 2 positions. The position we want to buy back is for our district court team of attorneys. They currently have 8 attorneys and only 1 administrative staff. The standards of indigent defense say that the industry standard should be at least a 4-to-1 ratio. I know from personal experience how critical it is to have this position, because it ultimately affects when people are released from jail or can conclude their cases. So we're asking you to support our request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Larry. Next is John Pettit.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm John Pettit. I live on Rich Road in East Olympia. This really is a troublesome time when I can't get documents that'll even be good for 1 day without numbers being changed. And I'm going to point out one that I saw. The items that the Budget and Finance Manager went through real quick, she showed you a sales tax revenue fund. The numbers on this have changed since yesterday. I don't know how you can depend upon anything that has the numbers constantly changing. When you've talked about this budget process, in April, you had figures here of different accounts. They change. June, they change. July, they change. And you're told, well, you don't really get to know the information. It's forecast out there. We have no idea what the real numbers are, but trust us. We're forecasting something we don't know anything about. Now, I'm going to tell you, one of the things that was not clear is you haven't had a major pitfall with your sales tax. Right now, for year to date, you're on a program of only being $50,000 below the forecasted amount of over $20 million. And yet, you tried to use for your figures to justify this action being reduced by $1.6 million from that figure. If you're going to use figures that are intentionally wrong, it is fraudulent. And quite honestly, there's a couple things maybe you don't really understand. Numbers, a little thing about numbers. They are absolute. Numbers are not a random choice of thought. They're an absolute thing. Now, back in November, during the midpoint where you adjusted your budget for a biennium, if you want to change to an annual, you need to take some legal action to go back to annual. But during that time, the people trusted you. They trusted you to approve the levies that you created to cover the expenses for the offices and departments for 2020. That's a level of trust. The state says, you've set your levies based upon that. If you're taking money away from those offices, you need to return money back to the people, because you will have created a levy that was created based upon certain information and you changed it, it'll be an illegal levy. I want to tell you, credibility is everything. And a person that makes a commitment in November to supply services to the residents and people of Thurston County, and then halfway through the process, oh wait, yeah, we got an extra 10 million in our account plus, but we still want to take money away from the departments. It is shameful, it's not accountable, it's not good business. I'm encouraging you, go through all your documents. I just got done supplying you a packet here, and look at it and see how much they change. And then in the very back of that packet, you have one sheet I created. Hey, put your own numbers in there, because it's a pretend thing at this point. If you don't have real numbers, you need to say, we're not ready to do this. And the last part I'll go, and then I'll stop, is out of your numbers, you were told very early in this process, there's a typical 3% return from the departments in the budget. Your budgeting office chose not to submit that, so you're working on a full level of what the budget was without that other 3% return. That would also put back another $3 million into the current expense fund at the end of the process. Please do the right thing. Stay honest to the people. Thank you.
Now, I don't see anybody else here in the boardroom, but I'm going to call it out anyway. Does anybody else like to testify before the board on the budget? All right, I'm going to go to the Zoom now. And please, for the folks on the Zoom, if you'd like to testify, your name will be called out by the county manager. And what we need is to have your name and your address for the record, please. And you'll be limited to 3 minutes as well, so we can get to everybody. And go ahead, Romero, please.
So thank you, commissioners. I'm going to be calling you based on the order that I see on the screen. The first one that I see is Mr. Tom Crawford. Please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Administrator Chavez. My name is Tom Crawford. I live at 1910 Evergreen Park Drive Southwest here in Olympia, Washington. Thank you, commissioners, for your service to our community and for your consideration and taking seriously the climate crisis that we have currently and the work of the and committing to the work of developing a Thurston climate mitigation plan and achieving serious targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. On the specific, and I also want to provide a special thank you to Commissioner Edwards for suggesting that we develop and share with the Board of Commissioners the proposal that we shared with you last week. And thank you for your discussion of that yesterday, I believe. So I would like to, with regard to that $150,000 proposal and your consideration of contributing $37,000 roughly to completing that work with 2020 money. We appreciate that and hope that you will go forward with that. I would make a suggestion that the proviso not be tied to contributions from the other three specific jurisdictions that Commissioner Menser suggested, but leave it open so that other jurisdictions can participate if they wish, and that there's a little more flexibility for those three jurisdictions in terms of how much each of them contribute. So that's one suggestion I would make in your consideration of going forward with this. I'd also suggest that based on Robin Campbell's presentation, it sounds to me like this amount is relatively non-impactful in terms of its potential impact one way or the other on your long-range budget concerns, and I think it's important for you to be responsible, for the commissioners to take those budget concerns seriously and to go forward with a prudent approach to that. I just suggest that compared to the small amount that this represents in terms of your overall budget and the I think potentially very significant impact this could have by getting the ball rolling, not only for bringing down carbon emissions, but also for making the county and our communities here in Thurston County much more competitive when the additional stimulus dollars and infrastructure dollars come down from the federal and state government. I think the financial impact could be very, very significant, or the financial return on investment from this could be very significant, and also the financial, the return on health, the health return on investment, and the community welfare return on investment could be extremely significant for this small step that you all are considering taking. So thank you again for your consideration, and thanks again for your service.
Thank you, Tom.
The next person that I have on the screen is Mr. Wayne Olson. Could you please unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Wayne Olson. I live at 2010 Cardinal Lane Southeast in Lacey. I'm a Panorama resident. I am representing my children and grandchildren for their future. And I'm also a volunteer for the Thurston Climate Action Team, Climate Reality Project, and the Panorama Green Team. I am asking that you vote yes to devote a portion of your 2020 budget to coordinate and organize energy efficiency services within the county. With 26 of my 30 years in the U.S. Naval Service as an oceanographer and meteorologist, then teaching oceanography and atmospheric science college courses, including climate change, for 9 additional years, I'm convinced by the overwhelming scientific evidence that climate change is real, is mostly caused by humans, and is an urgent crisis that will continue to worsen until we reduce our carbon emissions to net zero globally, worldwide. Thurston County's contribution to the world total CO2 emissions is about 3.5 million tons annually. Time is not on our side. We need to get started now. Your funding action will give an early start to actions items in the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan that will reduce those emissions and may also help to qualify this effort for future COVID recovery funds. I respectfully ask for your yes vote and certainly appreciate all the efforts that you do, and I don't envy you at your tasks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne.
Let me guess. The next person that I have on the screen is Mr. Sam Merrill. Please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. This is Sam Merrill. I'm at 3024 43rd Court Northwest in Olympia, and I'm also representing Thurston Climate Action Team. And I'd like to first thank you for developing, along with the cities, the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. And I'm speaking here in support of the request for $150,000 to be shared again with the cities for the energy efficiency program. Then would be part of this Amendment 4. And as certainly as I see it, and that's more important to my children and grandchildren, the climate crisis will, in the long run, be the bigger crisis than what we're experiencing now with COVID, as bad as that is. Certainly the funds that you can put up as seed money will help with the funds that can be received probably later from the federal stimulus funds. And so it's good to do that in preparation. And so basically, I would urge you to support this as part of the long-term effort toward the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next that I have on my screen is Mr. Tony Wilson. Could you please unmute yourself? You have 3 minutes. If you'd like to testify.
Yeah, sure, I would like to. First, I want to compliment Robin and her team. This is a moving target. It's not easy stuff trying to figure out what's happening in this environment. And they obviously work their butts off, and they're probably doing it every day. And I know from the things I do in my life how much more difficult it is to do it virtually as it was compared to doing it in person, where you could just step down the hall. You can't do that now. You got to do it the hard way. And I applaud them, each and every one, for the work they're doing. I also want to speak in support of those who say that we need to fund TCAT and the Energy Assistance Program, because we cannot throw everything away because we're up against the wall. You know, we are a civilized nation, we're a civilized county, and we will get through this, and we will not all die off and cease to be. I look at this from a personal standpoint as well, because I look at what's happening to the value of my real estate, not what's happening to your tax base, but what's happening to me. And my name is Tony Wilson. I live at 740 89th Avenue Southwest. They call it Olympia. It's in the county. And the houses where I am, the new houses and the existing houses from the 60s, 70s, and 80s are selling like they hit the market, they're gone. This is still a destination county. People still want to come here from all over the country and be here. And I like that Robin plans 2 years down the road and looks at the hard stuff to make sure that when we get there, if it's all in the fan by then, we planned for it. I love that. Thank you for that. But I also think we ought to look at the balance and think, you know, maybe it's not going to be all that bad. Maybe the money is going to balance itself. And maybe people still do want to live here, no matter how difficult it may be then. I thank you all. This is not easy stuff that you have to decide. None of it is. I sat yesterday in your meeting and looked at what you were doing and how you were thinking about things. And I applaud each of you for your honesty and your honor and your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
The next citizen that I have on my screen is Mr. Barack Hale.
Hi. I also want to thank the commissioners and staff for simply showing up in this extraordinarily challenging time on behalf of the public. I also, I'm Barack Hale. I live at 1038 Ebbets Drive, Southwest Tumwater. I'm an optometric physician. I also serve as co-chair of Climate Reality Project, Thurston County chapter. I also want to endorse and support the initiative, the budgetary initiative put forth by Thurston Climate Action Team with the proviso that was just stated by Tom Crawford. I totally appreciate the challenge of the budgetary shortfall that you're facing and that we face as a county. And I think it's helpful to understand the connections between COVID and climate change that can support this climate initiative as well as support a sustainable future for everyone. A similarity between COVID and climate change is that we've learned we have got to heed the warning of the scientists. We haven't done that with COVID, and you can see where we are. And we've had warnings from the scientists on climate change for decades, threat to an existential threat to our civilization. And we need to heed these warnings. Another similarity is that COVID and climate change both disproportionately impact communities of color, low-income communities, and people with asthma and other respiratory illnesses. So that really impacts what kind of society do we want to live in. But I want to mention a difference between COVID and climate change that I think really affects this, speaks to this budgetary process. And that is COVID, you know, governments have had to shut down major sectors of the economy to get some control on the virus. But with climate change, it's to the contrary. Whatever we invest, whatever budget we make, we provide for climate solutions will go towards green jobs. Solar technician jobs are the fastest growing occupation in the country. And wind turbine technicians is the second fastest growing job. So, and then there's building efficiency and many other jobs. This will stimulate the economy, and I really hope that's the direction that we will take. Thank you so much for your time. There's one, do I have a few more seconds?
Well, I'll give you a few seconds, yeah, go ahead.
You know, it's said that the difference between hope and despair is a good night's sleep. And, you know, I do agree with that, and I could use a little better sleep. However, in addition to that, there's another difference between hope and despair, and that is when our local governments or local communities invest in a clean, thriving future for our kids, in the face of uncertainty, in the face of not knowing what the federal investment is going to be, in the face of not even knowing if this is going to be enough to solve the crisis. That's what gives me hope. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
Next, I have Ms. Lisa Cezanne.
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Lisa Cezanne. I live at 303 41st Avenue Northeast, Olympia, but I'm in unincorporated Thurston County. I am a volunteer with Thurston Climate Action Team and also with Olympia Indivisible, which officially supports the passage, the adoption of the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan. I just want to say ditto to everything that my TCAT colleagues have said here today. It's really important that this climate mitigation plan be adopted and that funding be provided for it. So I am here in support of the funding request that TCAT has made. I do acknowledge how difficult it is for you and the other jurisdictions. I've lobbied for the climate mitigation plan in Lacey and Tumwater. Everybody's hurting. This crisis has been a real punch in the gut. So I give you a lot of kudos for dealing with this. And I also want to thank Robin Candle for that really informative budget report. It's really, really tough, but our request today is not a huge amount, and it does provide for a very important investment in our future, certainly for our survival's sake. That's just bottom line. This is an existential crisis, and the window is closing for us all over the world for being able to meet it and survive it. But it's an investment, as has already been mentioned, in our economic future, our economic recovery, the jobs, the job dividend, energy savings, all of this is built in. And then, of course, preventing health problems, as Barack was mentioning, and that can lower costs as well for the community. And also being a grandparent, I'm concerned about my grandchildren's future, and I think this is really important that we get a start, even if it's a small start, because we can't budget for everything we would like to start with next year. We can start with a little bit, and let's just get started, and let's just keep our eyes on the prize here of achieving the emissions reductions and seeing that dividend of better health, energy savings, and an investment in the new economy, because it's coming. We're going through a lot of changes now, and I think jobs, the whole economy is going to go through a big transformation. We can be part of it, and implementing this plan is part of that. So again, I want to thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your participation in the process for the climate mitigation plan. And again, just please consider at least this small request for now. It would really help us get started. Anyway, thank you again. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Next, I have Mr. Chris Van Dalen. Please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Chavez and commissioners. I'm Chris Van Dalen. I live at 3203 Lawrence Street, Southeast Olympia. And I just also want to thank the commissioners for doing such a great job in difficult times, and considering our request for a down payment on the Thurston Climate Mitigation Plan to launch an energy efficiency program that will benefit members of all members of our community, but specifically help to offset some of the disproportionate impacts that low-income and people of color and others in our community are feeling due to the crisis of respiratory health and economic dislocation. Our proposal is designed specifically to address all of those crises at once, both the climate crisis, the COVID crisis, and specifically the housing crisis by proposing a program that would focus on doing energy retrofits, healthy energy retrofits for specifically on rental properties and low-income properties, which tend to be occupied by cost-burdened individuals. And so I wanted to urge your support for the proposed investment in the budget amendment, and also just to reiterate what Tom said originally is that I understand that this would be a budget proviso and only kick in if the other jurisdictions were to also commit. I think it'd be good to build a little bit of flexibility into that proviso so that if in this time when other jurisdictions may not be able to do exactly what we think that they should, give them, we have the flexibility to go ahead with this program, even if it's a different amount from individual jurisdictions or maybe not quite the full amount. So I appreciate your consideration, and thank you again.
Thank you, Chris. Can I have your street name?
Oh, that's Lorne Street. It's spelled Lorne.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Next, I have Mr. Jack McLean. Can you unmute yourself, please? You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners, for considering this, and thank you to all the great volunteer work. I'm here to learn more about the proposal and to see where and how I can contribute. My work is in finance and investment banking. I've been involved in finance in energy efficiency and clean energy since the early 1980s. I've taught at Evergreen, Antioch, Bainbridge Graduate Institute. My training's in economics. I was involved with TCAT in the 2009 to 2011 period when we had ARA funds, and we've learned a lot of lessons on that. I have a huge regard for the TCAT network. Thank you, Tom, for all you do. I've been involved in the TRPC process, more recently just following along. I see this budget allocation as an investment, as others have said. It's an economic recovery action. We have the potential to leverage whatever financial contribution the county is able to make with other public funds, that's local, but potentially state and federal as well, but also with commercial finance. We have wonderful local financial institutions involved in and interested in expanding their business in this area. Generations Credit Union, OB Credit Union, Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union, Ole Fed, Heritage. There's a good business case for a lot of the energy efficiency action that would be coming out of the work spawned by this allocation, and we'll be leveraging a lot of community resources and volunteer time. So I'm also here speaking in support. Just real quick, I'm also involved in the commercial sector PACER, that's Property Assessed Clean Energy and Resilience Finance. It was just recently authorized by the state legislature in 2020. I've been in dialogue with County Treasurer Gadman on this topic as well, and working on some initial program designs and transactions in Snohomish, King, and Whatcom presently. So I'll be interested at some point in time, because it's a county option to participate and create a PACER program, to also dialogue with you on that. So again, thank you, commissioners. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. May I have your address, please, sir?
Pardon me, 3336 Libby, Libby, Road Northeast, Ole 98506. That's right outside the city limits
Thank you, sir.
in the county.
Thank you. Is that everybody on Zoom then?
Yes, that's all I have. Let me check.
Now, if anybody's on the conference call, we're heading your way. Please stand by.
Good afternoon. For those citizens who have joined us this afternoon via conference call, if you'd like to testify related to the budget amendment number 4, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes. State your name and your address. We have none.
Oh, are you kidding? Wow. Okay. And I'm looking around the room again. I don't see anybody in the room. I don't see anybody that hasn't testified. I don't see anybody on the Zoom. So there's no further testimony. So commissioners, you want to discuss this? Do you have any questions of staff?
I do have a question of staff.
Please.
My question is, are we taking one vote on the whole budget proposal in the 4th Amendment vote?
Next week, yes.
Next week, yeah.
Oh, next week. We're not going to do that now.
On the 4th.
Is that what's going to take place? It's going to be one vote on a total package?
On amendment number 4, yes.
On amendment number 4?
That is generally how amendments are.
Okay, if one of the commissioners wanted to vote for an item, but not other items in the budget, what would that take? Would that take a motion and a second and then a vote by this body to separate it?
I'd have to talk to Elizabeth, Commissioner, to see what that would take, but we could probably break it up. But perhaps we could talk more about that at the work session.
On Friday.
Oh, okay.
You know what, Commissioner, that's a good idea. I'd like to know about that process. Yeah, it'd be good to know. Anything else?
No, that's fine. We're not going to take a vote until Friday, so hopefully we'll have some answers.
Well, we'll take a vote on Monday, on
You're going to
Tuesday
take
the
a vote
4th.
on Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday the 4th. Okay.
Yeah,
You
we'll
will
have a work.
convene back on Friday.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menster, any questions of staff?
No, I think we're going to address everything on Friday.
I'm looking forward to that. So is there a motion?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to close this public hearing on amendment number 4 of the budget. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.